Hello, hi, my name is Karen O'Connell. I'm from SC Johnson Professional. And firstly, to start off, I'd just like to thank Bunzl Cleaning and Safety for the opportunity today. It's an absolutely fantastic platform. And also to congratulate them for the second successive year at the Elevate conference. So well done to Bunzl and the team. Today, I would like to talk about targeted hygiene, and it's breaking the chain of infection. So this targeted hygiene program has been designed by a number of professionals across a multitude of different sectors in conjunction with SC Johnson. And the idea behind it is it's the new world that we live in today. However, it's a new world for quite a lot of people in their everyday life, in the day-to-day office environment. However, in a healthcare facility, it's been the norm for quite a long time, and that's where our experiences lie. So in the fight to prevent the spread of COVID-19, and because of government requirements, many public spaces and commercial facilities have seen a dramatically reduced volume of people. Now, as we enter lockdown for the second time this year, when we do emerge in 6 weeks' time, there will be a huge concern. We can hear it already, that infection rates will rise again, particularly with the festive season on the horizon. This, coupled with heightened public awareness of the dangers posed by infectious diseases, requires the development of a new and improved approach to hygiene. So something that's completely different to the way we looked at things before. An understanding of how infection transmits, and something that's targeted at preventing the spread of infection in public places. So heightened awareness as a result of COVID-19 prevents a once-in-a-generation opportunity to shift the emphasis and to underline the role and behaviours in ensuring hygiene is reduced in the risk. Everyone must be made aware that they have a role to play in this for it to actually work. So that's everyone from designers and architects, completely from the onset in new buildings. About 4 years ago, I attended a new build in the north of Ireland, and the facility was absolutely fantastic, groundbreaking in its design, and aesthetically just beautiful. And we went to have a look at the hand hygiene practicalities, and on inspection it turned out that there was no hand hygiene incorporated into the facility. And this was a hospital we were talking about, so it was quite surprising that it wasn't taken into the initial design. So most of the hand washing facilities that was implemented was in an aesthetically closed off built-in units, and it didn't allow for the use of hospital grade soap. And the same was said for hand sanitization. So the walls were so aesthetically beautiful that they didn't want to put dispensers on the wall, and it was all driven by architects and designers, not from the practicalities of what the hospital actually needed. So in the world we live in today, we now need to change that thought process. The thought process, not only talking about it from a hospital stance, but when we look at, the supermarket, when you go to the supermarket in the evenings, now we see people hand washing, we see the facial coverings. We see that thought process already in play. So it's how do we get that behavior change for people to actually lead forward with that? So it starts off with the designs, the architects, and then it moves on to what the guys were talking about in the last presentation. So it's the facility managers. How did they actually get that message out? And it's assisting them with the tools to approach that issue. And then to get that message then out to the office users and the general public. And the problem that we face there is sometimes the issues then, or the message gets diluted slightly. So it's how can we bring that back? However, never has there been ever in living memory such a clear social and economic case to communicate, educate, and adapt a better hygiene practice. So breaking the chain of infection, there is a misconception out there that commonly touched surfaces are the points of high risk, and we see it all of the time. We need to clean down counters, we need to clean keyboards, we need to clean mobile phones, and that is really, really important. However, it's the behavior of people touching those surfaces that is the real issue. So I'd just like to give you some numbers. If we look at hand hygiene And, we look at what we already have on our hands. We have between 2 and 10 million bacteria between our fingertip and our elbow. That's the average person carries that amount of bacteria. And some of those bacteria are what we need. And what's safe for me might not necessarily be safe for the next person. So we need to understand that 80% of all infections are transmitted by our hands. So it's us that's moving the bacteria and the bugs about. 30% of foodborne illness outbreaks can be traced to poor personal hygiene, and germs can stay alive on our hands for up to 3 hours. And every 20 minutes, they're multiplying. So big, big numbers. So as I stated before, COVID-19 is something that we've had to deal with essentially this year. But for many years prior to that, we've been looking at ways that we can help prevent the spread of infection. And we've encountered numerous issues along the way. And one of those issues that I can share with you is a very live issue from a construction company. So moving away from a hospital facility. So when we look at an infection or, the spread of an infection, we look at the amount of cells it takes to get us sick. And each of them actually vary. But one of them that's, a really good example would be the norovirus. So for the norovirus, it takes just 10 cells to actually get us sick. So we ingest the 10 cells, they work their way through our system. By the time we use the restroom, they'll have multiplied to 100,000 cells per 1 gram of feces. We flush the toilet chain, all of those cells waft up out a cubicle and can contaminate the washroom as far as 9 feet out. Now, if you're working in a public environment, you don't necessarily know who's used the washroom prior to you. So therefore, you can go in and touch several of those surfaces and carry that contamination out. And that's where hand hygiene becomes essential. So when I look at the construction company where we actually had a live issue with this, it was on a construction site and it was an entry point into the site. So it was a clocking machine into the site where a staff member presented with the norovirus, not 100% shown symptoms, but presented at the clock-in machine right at entry. And on the entry point into the site, the clock-in machine was outside. It was a hospital facility, funny enough, they were building. And in the cold weather, it didn't always work well because of the touch screen. So what the employees used to do was lick their thumbs first, put it on the machine, and that would kind of speed up things and get them into sight. So this guy presents with the norovirus, contaminates the clock-in machine, and then every person walking in thereafter is licking their hands and walking into the site. Within 8 hours, it closed down the construction project. And the monetary cost to the construction project was £60,000 for every day they were late in construction. So it's just one idea, one example of how the spread of infection can cause a huge, huge impact. And beforehand, we didn't have many live experiences of that. This year, we've many, many live experiences with the outbreak of COVID. So targeted hygiene is something that we need to change. It's a change in behavior. It's a thought process to change the way we think. It was born out of what we know works, which is the 5 moments of hand hygiene. And the 5 moments of hand hygiene is universally used throughout healthcare. And for those of you that don't work in healthcare or don't know what the 5 moments are, they're 5 moments when a healthcare worker must hand wash or hand sanitize their hands when they're dealing with a patient. And those 5 moments are before patient contact, before an aseptic task, after contact with bodily fluid exposure, after contact with the patient, and after contact with a patient's surroundings. So they're the 5 moments in which you must hand wash. And the thought process, I suppose, behind that is if you can think of, a dirty washroom where somebody has had potentially the norovirus, and we talk about the toilet flush. If you're a healthcare worker or a member of staff working in a hospital and you attend a washroom where something like that has taken place, when you're in that washroom, you don't essentially wash your hands or wash your hands effectively. You leave the washroom and your next port of call is into a vulnerable patient. So you take that bacteria or that virus into their environment. We have to think of that in our everyday workplace. How can we adapt our programs to essentially suit that? So the program is implemented rigorously, and it must be adhered to by every healthcare staff member, every porter, every cleaning staff member. And it's something that's not easy to implement. And studies have been done on this. So, people understand they must wash their hands. Workers understand they must sanitize their hands. However, it's a behavior. And I always liken it to seatbelts. Back in the 80s, 90s, we didn't, as a population, wear seatbelts, or very few of us did. Now it's an automatic thing. When we get into a car, we put our seatbelt on. And that's the behavior change that we need to see in terms of hand hygiene. So to prevent frequent recontamination, we do need to combine hand cleaning with disinfectant surfaces, with effective hand hygiene, and at high risk moments when hands can become contaminated. So experts have identified that when the workplace, public facilities, there are 8 moments for high risk for spreading infections. And all people working or visiting these places can help break the chain by eliminating the risk and spreading the infection from person to person using these 8 moments. So touching common surfaces. So common surfaces in your working day, as an adult, we will touch approximately 30 objects every 60 seconds. So when we think about it, door handles, light switches, clock-in machines, lift buttons, but also keyboards, mobile phones. This job, as glamorous as it is, I spend a lot of time in the washroom place. So you see people's behavior coming in and out of the washroom. And most people these days carry their mobile phone into the cubicle with them. So it's just another area to contaminate and take out with you. So common surfaces, it's just about thinking about common surfaces in which we touch on a daily basis and bringing that to the forefront. After coughing, sneezing, or blowing your nose. So these things happen. It's making sure that we have the facility in place to be able to either hand wash or sanitize when we experience something like this. So again, that can be done through an assessment of your workplace, just making sure that within walking distance, there is an opportunity to clean our hands. Returning and leaving your workspace. So what we need to understand is your workplace is actually a clean space. We clean down our work surfaces all of the time. The only way we can contaminate the workplace itself or the workspace is when we actually come from somewhere else to the workspace, or a colleague comes by to the workspace. That's how we can contaminate it. So by cleaning our hands, returning and leaving the workspace, it'll ensure that you're working continuously in a clean environment. Getting and preparing food and eating food. So this one is really, really important. Back in 2018, there was a study done in a fast food restaurant in the UK, and it was done across 11 restaurants. And what they done was they swab tested the kiosks for ordering food, because that's the new way that we do things. We now do everything digitally. We order ourselves and we use the touchscreen systems. So they swab tested them, and they found that every single kiosk that was tested across the 11 sites was contaminated. And they were contaminated with all sorts of different levels of bacteria, some quite common and some what we would expect to find. But there was also traces of fecal matter found on the touchscreens. Now, any vulnerable person picking up anything leaving the gut can get seriously ill from something like that. Now, there was some research done thereafter, and I think from a media stance, this particular fast food restaurant got quite bad press after this study took place. But the important part to remember was, these touchscreens were actually cleaned down. They were contaminated by the constant use, the constant foot flow. And the kiosks were the only things that were actually swab tested. But what about the door handles on the way in? How many people would have touched those on the way in? So it was more about not highlighting the fact that the kiosks themselves were contaminated, but the fact that when we go into these locations, we order our food, and the next process is we sit down and eat our food. we never or very rarely will hand wash between those two elements. So it's bringing that message back to the forefront. Using the toilets, it's a pretty obvious one, but there is 30% of people do not wash their hands after they've been to the washroom, and a further 30% don't use soap when they do wash their hands. So it is really, really important that when we do use the restrooms, given the norovirus instance I used, the norovirus is one virus amongst many viruses that you can be contaminated with. So it is really, really important that we hand wash when leaving the washroom facility, and hand washing will ensure you're washing the contaminants away from the skin. And the entrance and exits of buildings, which is extremely important. As mentioned before with the workplace, we contaminate workspaces, we contaminate buildings. So it's whoever's coming from outside into the workplace needs to ensure that they hand wash or hand sanitize on entry. And then obviously disposing of waste is quite important. So targeted hygiene is about implementing the right product at the right place for use at the right time. Not only is the right products essential, but the education piece to go with that is extremely important. So quite a lot of the time we give products out to the general public and we expect that they understand how to use them. Something as simple as what we think hand washing. Well, how long should we hand wash for? Hand sanitizing. How does it work? For hand washing, when you hand wash, you wash the bugs and bacteria away from your skin. Your hands are clean. When you sanitize, the bugs don't essentially go anywhere. We have to ensure that we cover them for enough time with the right product in order to kill those those bugs, bacteria. So, and that number is 30 seconds, which is a guideline from the WHO. So it's getting that message out to people, which is the important message. So the essential products, obviously we have to look at hand hygiene. So it's a hand hygiene product range. We have to look at the kill rates of the product. So across the news over the past week, we've seen products in the media that haven't quite lived up to this specification that they should be for hand hygiene. So it's very, very important that we understand the product that we're putting directly in contact with our skin. It's something that can cause skin irritations or skin issues. And we can breathe a lot of these products in more time than not. So again, that's really, really important that we're ensuring we understand exactly what's in the product. So we generally look for a hand sanitizer that has a 75% plus alcohol level. So we're looking for ethanol alcohol. Looking at the EN claims is important. So ensuring that your hand sanitizer meets EN 1500 is essential, which is EN 1500 is essentially the gold standard for hand hygiene. And then looking at the virucidal side of it. So what is it effective against? When we look at COVID-19, coronavirus, we know that it's easy to kill. It is an enveloped virus. So most products on the market, most reputable products on the market will be effective against COVID-19. However, there's a multitude of other things that your sanitizer may not be effective against, and it might be just important to highlight those things. So I spoke about the norovirus earlier, a little bit more difficult to kill. It is a non-enveloped virus, and therefore you must ensure that your product has been tested for that particular virus to ensure that it does kill it. And the contact time for that is 30 seconds with the SC Johnson product. So you're looking for something that has fully virucidal properties, or EN 14476. Then it's the ECARF accreditation. Does it hold the ECARF accreditation? As I mentioned before, we're putting these products actually on our skin. So making sure that, you know, those with sensitive skin don't come out in irritations. So that's also critical. And then allowing different formats to allow the products to be used in the right locations, right time, etc. Same for surface hygiene. You know, frequent targeted cleaning and disinfection for common touched areas is important, and ensuring that the right products are being used to be able to form those actions. So the impactful behaviour, there has been a lot of research behind behaviour and the challenge and difficulties around changing somebody's behaviour. So from some studies we have done, it suggests that you need to change or educate someone nearly 7 times with 7 different touch points in order for them to change a behavior. So it's very, very difficult to do. Generally, when someone is watching somebody doing something, they will do it. However, once people start to feel more comfortable, they tend to go back into their natural behavior. So the education piece is critical. So what we have to aid with that is how-to videos. So videos for training sessions and to play on fixed information screens. How-to facility user handout cards. So again, something just with a little bit more information. Pull-up banners for key facility entry and transition points. So if you're going from one part of a building to another, just to keep that highlighted and in the mindset. Bus stop signs to actually highlight where your sanitizing stations are. Reminder posters, reminder stickers, reminder screensavers and mouse mats. Pretty much anything that we can do to get that message across. So each location is different and must be assessed on its own merits using the 8 moments of hygiene. So we have an expert team that can help you facilitate that exact thing. And it's done through a few different elements. So we can do a request a video call audit. You can download our auditing tools to help with it, or you can request an on-site audit, which we would be more than happy to facilitate. And again, it's just making sure that we have the right products, right place, right time. So not only are we assessing your key entry points, your key 8 moments, but we're also assessing the type of products that's being used to ensure that they are fit for purpose. And that's everything. So if anybody has any questions, they can come visit us at our booth later today. We'd be more than happy to have a chat further on what we can do to assist you. Thanks very much.